Hello and welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another video. If you are new to this channel, my name is Frank Tu, and I'm a college professor teaching sociology, history and philosophy. I'm also an award-winning landscape photographer. If you live in America like me, or if you don't live in America but you are familiar with the American culture, you should know that Thanksgiving is just around the corner. For many of us, Thanksgiving is one of the two most important holidays, the other one being Christmas. In today's video, I want to first take the opportunity to briefly talk about the origin and history of Thanksgiving in America. Then, I think I will spend a considerable amount of time discussing some of the controversies and criticisms about Thanksgiving. I will share with you some of my own critical thoughts. Thanksgiving tradition began with the first English settlers in America. But the English were not the first Europeans to come to the New World. Christopher Columbus, who was commissioned by the Spanish king, set foot in this continent in 1492. 5 years later, in 1497, an explorer by the name John Cabot, who was commissioned by the English crown, came to North America. Cabot's mission was to search for a new route to Asia. After that, a few other English settlers also came in exploration. However, it was not until a century later that the English started making any serious efforts to establish colonies in America. As we all know, the arrival of Columbus marked the beginning of European colonization of the New World, accompanied by a lot of brutality and bloodshed against the Native Americans. Europeans such as Spanish, Portuguese, French, and English were all eager to claim their colonies while driving away the Native Americans. Some of them came to try their fortunes in the New World. Others came to spread Christianity. However, unlike the Spanish, who were more interested in seeking profits than settling in the New World, the English came as settlers. The first group of English settlers arrived in what is modern-day Jamestown, Virginia, in 1607. Jamestown, which was named after the English King James I, thus became the first permanent settlement by the English. That's why when we talk about American history, we usually start with Jamestown. Our story about Thanksgiving, however, started with the second group of English settlers. In September 1620, a group of 102 pilgrims got on board a small ship called the Mayflower in Plymouth, England, and set sail to the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. By the way, pilgrims were a group of religious people who wanted to separate from the Church of England. They felt that they were persecuted at home and were looking for a new home in the New World to practice their religion freely. Their intended destination was the mouth of the Hudson River. However, as a result of strong winds, they ended up in modern-day Plymouth, Massachusetts, after a long journey of over 2 months on the sea. Please note that Plymouth in Massachusetts was named after the English port of Plymouth because the pilgrims had set sail from there. Many of pilgrims were educated people, and they knew in front of them was a completely new life. They needed a kind of organization to regulate the new community. So, they held a meeting and signed an agreement on board before they put their feet on land. The document established a governing body and decided on the way of electing a governor. This agreement became known as the Mayflower Compact, and it has since been considered as the first American Constitution. If signing a compact on board was easy, the life ahead of the Pilgrims was far more difficult. In fact, none of them had anticipated the hardship they would soon face once they set foot on the new land. First and foremost, the timing of their arrival was bad because they arrived in winter, and nobody had expected to see such brutality of winter in Massachusetts. Of course, they had intended to land at the mouth of the Hudson River, where the weather would have been much better. Besides, those people had little experience living in such conditions, and they had few skills of surviving a hard time. Throughout that first brutal winter, most of the new settlers remained on board the ship, where they suffered from cold and diseases and lack of food. Only half of the Mayflower's original passengers and crew lived to see their first New England spring. In March, the remaining settlers moved ashore, where they received a surprising visit from a group of Native Americans. Those people taught the Pilgrims, who had been weakened by malnutrition and illness, how to cultivate corn, catch fish in the rivers, and avoid poisonous plants. In November 1621, after the Pilgrims' first successful harvest, Governor William Bradford organized a celebratory feast. In their view, it was God who helped them survive the brutal winter. They wanted to take the opportunity to thank God. That was the first Thanksgiving ever in America. After that, other colonies also started their Thanksgiving festivals, and they did so on quite a regular basis. In 1789, President Washington issued an order designating a day in November for Thanksgiving across the nation. He called upon the Americans to express their gratitude for the victory of the Independence War. After that, a few other presidents also designated a particular day as Thanksgiving Day. However, it was not until the presidency of Abraham Lincoln that Thanksgiving became a national holiday. In 1863, at the peak of the Civil War, he issued a proclamation according to which Thanksgiving Day would be the final Thursday in November. Since then, it was celebrated on that day every year until 1939, when President Franklin D. Roosevelt moved the holiday up a week in an attempt to encourage retail sales during the Great Depression. However, his plan was met with a strong opposition. In 1941, the president reluctantly signed a bill making Thanksgiving the fourth Thursday in November every year. Please note that it is the fourth Thursday, not the final Thursday in November. Nowadays, the Americans celebrate Thanksgiving every year. As a matter of fact, it is considered as the second most important holiday after Christmas. For many Americans, the Thanksgiving celebration has lost much of its original religious significance. Instead, it is a time for family members to get together. The holiday centers on cooking and sharing a big and delicious meal. For most American families, turkey is a must on their dinner table on Thanksgiving Day. There are all kinds of public activities as well, including parades in major American cities. But the holiday is not without controversy and criticism in America. Some Americans, and especially some of the Native Americans, feel that the traditional Thanksgiving story is a myth which only whitewashes the brutal realities of colonization. According to them, Thanksgiving celebrations hide the true history of oppression and bloodshed which underlies the relationship between European settlers and Native Americans for the next several hundred years. The impact of colonization on Native Americans was devastating. Their population drastically declined due to diseases, warfare, and starvation. Their land was violently seized by Europeans. The cultural and social landscape was also permanently altered through forced assimilation, the suppression of languages and traditions, and the removal of children to boarding schools. To express their anger, to remind Americans of their suffering, and to protest against those who glorify Thanksgiving, some Native Americans even have gone so far as establishing the National Day of Mourning on the same day as Thanksgiving. For them, the National Day of Mourning honors their ancestors and their struggles against oppression which followed European settlement. Some other critics, myself included, argue that those pilgrims who survived the first winter should have at least expressed their gratitude for the Native Americans, because it was they who actually helped the new settlers. There are also people, myself included again, who point out to the holiday's increasing commercialization. In their eyes, Thanksgiving has lost its original cultural significance, but has encouraged a culture of materialism, because it is used to mark the beginning of the holiday shopping season every year. The so-called Black Friday, for example, has been criticized for promoting overconsumption and waste. Partly because of Thanksgiving, they argue American society has become excessively materialistic, driven only by money. Well, I think that is all that I wanted to talk about in today's video. As always, thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.